Hello, everybody. This is Jerry Serino of From the Median podcast. Thank you so much for joining me as always. Please go to fromthemedian.org and connect with us. We'd really appreciate that. And you can get all of our episodes there as well. I'm really excited because I am joined by Vianca Rodriguez. She is a political media strategist. She's a former HHS press secretary, and she was on the Trump 24 Hispanic deputy communications director and spokesperson, and she's here to talk politics with us, which we love to do here. Yeah, thank you for being here.
No, thank you for having me, Jerry. It's such a pleasure to be here with you.
Yes, of course. So I want to actually, I always am interested in people's, kind of life story in a little bit. Certainly there's a lot of, I'm sure, exciting things you can talk about and passions you have as far as issues in the roles that you had in our government. But tell me about you before that. I mean, what was your life like? How did you get to the point of saying, I'm going to get politically active and be involved?
Man, I would say that it happened a little bit throughout high school, but it solidified when I first got to college, like in my freshman year. A fun fact that I like to tell a lot of people, but it's not really the best fact, but still one that I don't really shy away from is that I started off thinking I was a Bernie Sanders supporter.
Mm.
And I did a little bit of like the grassroots, like getting people to register to vote for him for I wouldn't say it was too long. I promise you, if you bear with me, I'll explain. But part of that, now looking back is there a lot of it was ignorance. A lot of it was there were a lot of people that were telling me all these catchy slogans of, you can go to college for free or get into a lot of debt and then don't worry about it. And that goes to show just how predatory this type of ideology has always been.
Yeah.
But flash forward, we can say maybe like a couple months after that, I started talking more with my sister about what it was that really that I really identified with. And all throughout my life, I was raised in a very Christian household. I went to church pretty much every Sunday, and I that's one thing I was never going to falter on, was actually being pro-life. And so when I realized
Mhm.
that the Democrat Party was not at all aligned with that, maybe those really old school Democrats, but they don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
um, I said, no, I think I'm going to have to advocate more for this and advocate for the Republican Party. And that's kind of how it all started. It really started with me figuring that value out, was which party is more pro-life. And I knew that it was the Republican Party. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. So were you even pro-life when you were a Bernie supporter, or was that not an issue that was sort of on your mind?
I had always been pro-life. The thing was that at the time, I didn't think that they were so hyper focused on that. But then I started
Hmm.
seeing more, you know, like more divisive topics and debates
Yeah.
coming up on Facebook specifically when it came to that topic. I remember this one girl, even she was telling me, "Oh, just because it's, only a couple weeks old, it's not really a life. It's not a human being. It's a fetus." Trying to dehumanize. And so that's where a lot of my debate started, was fighting for the defense of preserving life, and then continuing through that, just like, you know, I didn't want government interfering in my livelihood. I saw my grandparents and how they brought up their own bakery and how hard they had to work to just bring means to our table and to raise all of us and kind of like continue that effect, that domino effect throughout my family. So I've always just been also very passionate about lowering taxes and making quality of life better for everyone.
Amazing. What is your family background? Are you first generation, second generation? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I would say my mom, she was born in Chicago, but I mean, we're all born U.S. citizens, so
Yeah.
it's just, culturally speaking, it's definitely very different being
Yeah.
raised on the island versus on the mainland. But most of I would say, like me being predominantly English speaking is because of my mom, because she was raised up until her mid teenage life, and then she became an English teacher. So since I was really little, I've been fully bilingual. And yeah, I mean, I would say it's interesting. I mean, on the island, a lot of people, they might not identify politically the same way that we do on the mainland, because their issues are more like whether they believe in statehood for the island or not. But a lot of them are very conservative, staunchly, like traditionally old school conservative.
Hmm.
So that's kind of how I've been raised. If that gives you any insight.
Yeah. So what was your sister? So you were saying you talked to your sister about things. What was she saying to you? So I'm going to presume then she remained conservative. She wasn't a Bernie supporter and saw that you were. So tell me about that engagement.
She was always fighting with me. She was
Oh
telling me
yeah.
like, Bianca, you're gonna wake up one day and you're gonna realize, this was so crazy. Like you don't really believe this. Because she knew that I was in a way, I was really being brainwashed by these professors. A lot of them are really, I'm telling you, like the most radical of them all. Like they're people that are justifying that to this day they justify terrorists. There was a
Mhm.
time in the country. I don't know if you remember this case about these Puerto Rican bombers that had attempted to bomb the Capitol, and they went to jail for domestic terrorism. To this day, I think it was in 2015. So my freshman year, they had invited one of them that was still alive to go speak, and everyone there was like, "Wow, this guy, he's what's the word, like not mercenary, but they looked at him with a high regard." And then I was like, this is weird. Why are we bringing a guy that went to federal prison for literally for committing federal crimes and attempting against our country? It's terrorism. So that's where it was so normalized in our day-to-day conversation. And then I was almost, I wouldn't say that I was that radicalized. So I think there was a little bit of a saving a saving
Mhm.
grace with me. And so she kept insisting, and then always debating with me. And it was just one day. I can't really pinpoint exactly the exact date, but it was like a series of events that led up to that in my brain I went, you know what, you're right. Like why am I defending these candidates when I really don't share anything in common with them beyond that whole free college and free tuition
Yeah.
claim. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
good for your sister. Good for your
Yes.
sister. She
Yes.
she
Give her
she
the
needs to
shout
get into
out.
politics if she's not already. Yeah. Yeah, shout out to her. So you made this transition, which is great, and then you obviously got involved in politics as in HHS, involved with the Trump campaign, in the Trump presidency. Tell me about that transition. How did you get into that and get to where you are now?
It all started because I had to move out of the island after Hurricane Maria hit us. I transferred to Arizona State University to finish my bachelor's there. And being in Arizona, I was able to get more involved with local races there. Like I helped out with for example, Martha McSally. She was running for Senate at the time. But I got my first big girl job working with Turning Point USA, just
Mm,
right out of their headquarters. I worked with Tyler, who's one of the well, he was at the time the chief operating officer. So basically Charlie's right hand man, and I started off as his executive assistant, and so that gave me so much exposure to the whole world and how everything was moving throughout the events and meeting so many different people that were doing a lot of different grassroots type of operations and collaborations and partnerships with them. And so through them, I kind of funneled my way. I continued to evolve, so to speak, because a lot of the work that they do is obviously more, educational, college or high school campus oriented. And I wanted to just dive deep into the political side of things. Like I started getting really passionate about the go of campaigning and storytelling. And through that, I was able to do a lot more media. And so I was majoring in political science. I thought I wanted to do the traditional, just like behind the scenes, public policy route or lobbying. And I said, I started to think about it. There's not a lot I really virtually don't know any other Hispanic female conservative individual aside from myself that's out here doing the actual communications, the vocal work, and defending things that you don't hear from, right? Like you see it a lot on the left but not on the right. So I started getting more into it. Turning Point encouraged me to do more like Telemundo, Univision, to start off on the Spanish side because I felt more comfortable at the time, and I did
mhm.
debates with them. And so let's say that led to working actually full time with Univision in 2021. I was there for 3 years, every single day, Monday through Friday, debating the craziest, most radical left wingers that you can think of. I mean, it got to the point where one of the conversations wasn't even a conversation, it was just demonic straight out. And I said,
Mm,
you know, I don't want to be part of this anymore.
yeah.
Not because I didn't want to continue, it's still important, but I said, I gotta get back into actually, you know, taking more action, not being so restricted with what I could say on air either. So that's what led me to working on the Trump campaign. I had a friend that was working with them, and he's still with the RNC. Jaime, I deeply admire him, and he's the actual Hispanic communications director. So I came in being his deputy, and he was vouching for me for so long, and so that was it really turned into a calling. And after that, you know, kind of like the rest of his history, as I like to say,
Hmm.
because of the importance of engaging specifically our community in both languages. And so
Yeah.
yeah, and then after that,
Well,
HHS.
yeah, that's great. So curious, being Hispanic, um, when we talk about Hispanic issues, what are they? What would you say if someone said, "Well, what are the issues for your community?"
It's not just immigration. I would even say if we were to talk about immigration, it's not anymore through the lens of we have to do something about the illegals in the country, in the sense of, you know, legalizing them. Because what I'm seeing in our side of the discussion is we want more protection, we want more safety, we want more law enforcement to make sure that those that are coming across the border every single day, or that they, you know, thank God now it's no longer that much of a problem. But during the Biden administration, it was persistently those that lived right by the border were noticing that these people were coming in, they were invading a lot of their ranches and their farms, and they're not being they weren't being intercepted. And so it really became a safety issue for a lot of them too. That, I mean, for me individually too, it's like we're born US citizens, most of us, or we've
Hmm.
done it, we've come to this country the legal way. So it's not fair to be boxing us all into this one particular segment where all, like, we're all illegal, which is not true, and that all we care about is legalizing those that are here undocumented. No, we want safety, we care about the economy. Like, we are American citizens, therefore our issues are the same kitchen table issues as the rest of America, as like yours probably are, right?
Hmm.
So that's kind of the messaging that we try to stick to, is rather than dividing everyone, and especially those in our community, as like we have these very nitpicky issues. It's like, no, we have an alliance, let's build on it, let's strengthen it. We have the same problems that other, you know, Asian Americans, Black Americans, whoever, you know, they all have the same problems, and that's what we were trying to encompass, and it ended up being successful.
Yeah. So just because I'm somewhat ignorant, and I'm presuming some of my listeners may not know all the ins and outs of Puerto Rico and its relationship to the United States in a sense. So being from born and living in Puerto Rico, you are considered a US citizen. Is that correct, or how does that work?
Yes. So we are, to kind of sum it all up, since 1898, we are a territory of the United States. We actually didn't get full citizenship until right before, if I'm not mistaken, or throughout the First World War, you know, because they needed the manpower. That's just a fact.
Hmm.
And ever since then, like, we've had, I would say, millions, almost millions of Puerto Ricans, like, throughout the century, throughout the last years, that have been involved ever since then in our armed forces, and you know, in so many different capacities that have been contributing to the country in one shape or another. And so that's really how it historically started, and that's why we have citizenship the moment that we're born.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. And then you also then consequently you vote in the elections just like everyone else, correct?
So this is where it gets really tricky. So because, okay, so we're US citizens, but we're not a state. And that's
Right.
why the whole, like, the constant persistent debate and lobbying in favor of becoming a state, you know, whether or not to become a state or to be independent, because we're in that weird limbo middle ground that is the freely associated state, where we have the benefits of each side, but
Hmm.
we're really not benefiting. I mean, the island is not benefiting economically. We have, like, a lot of the things that we buy mainland are way more expensive there. Gas is way more expensive there. Like, I was talking to my uncle the other day. He said it's already around something dollars the gallon, which is crazy, right? Because considering
Hmm.
everything, but yeah, so it's one of those things where it's not sustainable long term. It was never really meant to be. It was actually meant to be a temporary solution. We know that Ronald Reagan was very supportive of statehood, like very vocally in favor of it, and several other presidents, but no one really had taken action because at the end of the day, it's not really up to the president, it's up to Congress. So what we do, we vote in primaries. We have primaries take place there, and they're usually more of like a symbolic vote. They count, but they're more
Hmm.
symbolic. And then in the general election, we can't really vote directly. Not living in the island. If we live in stateside, we could participate.
So you can come to the mainland in your, and can you then vote in, the state that you live in if you come to the
Yeah,
mainland?
yeah, exactly,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, obviously you have to
Okay.
prove your residency, but yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes. Interesting. Very good. No, thank you for that. I didn't fully know all the ins and outs of that, and that's good to know.
yeah.
Do you feel that the people of Puerto Rico are a pro-life people? I mean, if there was a vote tomorrow for just the island and, pro-life or pro-abortion, how do you think the vote would go?
That's a great question. I would say that the majority are more pro-life because of the fact that like I was saying a little bit earlier, they may not be the most hyper partisan segment of the country, but they are very traditional. They are very pro, like they're conservative religiously, they're conservative socially. We see more of the younger generation being a little more adamant to be, pro religion or Christian or anything like that. So they're more open to considering abortion, but that's not, I mean, we know this. This is a pattern. This is a consequence also of just like where our society is headed, unfortunately, unless we do something about it, which is what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to
Hmm.
combat against that, push back. But yes, I would say that the majority, considering the demographic right now as it stands, they're still very much pro life.
Gotcha. Okay. And
Yeah.
tell me what it was like working for the Trump 2024. You were Hispanic deputy communications director and spokesperson. What were the main sort of issues that you were discussing or hearing out there?
So the way that we would treat it is we were all kind of like one same team. Every week we had a content calendar, so to say, in the communication side of things, where one week we would focus on the economy. The next week, our topic, our theme would be, again, like immigration, or it would be let's go all ham against Kamala Harris, like
Hmm.
full blown offense. And I thought it was really cool to do it that way because it felt a lot more organized to be able to talk about the different topics. But for the most part, I was helping kind of translate the key core message and at the same time helping advise some of those, top leaders or leadership that are now in the White House working in the communication side of things, like Caroline Levitt and Stephen Chung and all those really cool, great people,
Hmm.
just telling them like how we could approach better our community. I
Yeah.
mean, I thought it was just so cool. It was. I can't even describe the exact feeling, but it's one of those surreal experiences. I think surreal would be a better fit for that, where I couldn't believe
Yeah.
that I was in the same room as all of these power people. You
Yeah.
know?
It's amazing. That's amazing
Yeah.
yeah, you who would imagine? I think so many of us, sometimes can't look back when we were much younger and can't believe, we have the gifts that we have today, whether regardless of what they are. It's a lot to be grateful for. Um, One of
Amen.
the things that I always sort of question, is always curious to me, is the word Hispanic, right? Meaning it's sort of like, like my heritage is I'm half Italian. I have some Irish and Hungarian, I guess, that kind of thing. I don't call myself European, right? Or first of all, I don't really call myself anything, I don't look any different. But I mean,
Yeah.
you have Hispanic, you have people from Spain, you have Mexicans, you have all the different Central American countries, you have Puerto Rico, and all the but it seems like they kind of want to lump everybody in together. Do you think that that's good, or are there differentiators?
I think for the sake of wanting to recapture and empower again the identity of being American, it's important to, kind of highlight those similarities rather than the differences, because that's what the Democrats like to do. They like to just like,
Hmm.
keep us like all apart because we're apparently, according to them, we're just so incredibly different that we can't ever find anything in common in this country or be
Yeah,
patriotic, for
right,
example.
right.
So I completely disagree with that, and I know that a lot of people within the party disagree with that too. Um, they do, however, understand, and the campaign understood it very well too. It's you have to be, smart and strategic about it. It's not necessarily that we're all exactly the same,
Sure.
um, but we also don't want to emphasize too much on the differences. However, it is true what you're saying. There are certain caveats and certain nuances where my issues may not necessarily be the same issues, or even, historically speaking, as other Mexicans or other Guatemalans or from whatever other country they we all come from, right?
Hmm.
So I would say it's if we were to focus if we were to focus on all those differences, we would never end. I think that's the
Yeah.
problem. And I think we need to just get to the point, and it's like, what are we going to do to just we all want to live a better life. We're all in this country for a reason, and we came, or those that I know came from their countries escaping totalitarian regimes, socialism, communism, starvation, poverty, violence, gang related crime, you name it, right? And so those are the things that I think we can all kind of point to a pattern where we say we don't want to bring that, we don't want that to be
Mhm.
our standard in this country. We want the United States to keep maintaining that position of being the number one superpower in the world, the safest place to live in, and all the values that make this country great. So I mean, I think that's the most important
Yeah.
aspect. It's like just finding that common ground.
Yeah, no, I get it. I think it's at the end of the day, the values and the needs and the issues of Hispanics, of blacks, of whites, Asians is all the same. Like you said, we
Hmm.
want prosperity, we want freedom, we want safety, we want safe communities, good schools, we want opportunities, right? Right.
Yeah.
Our needs and desires are all really the same, but but there certainly are differences, a little bit in identities and the like, and that's definitely true. So, well, thank you, Vianca Rodriguez. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I loved hearing it, and again, a shout out to your sister as well. Great job, and I'm sure
Her name is
all you.
Karen. I'm gonna send her this
Can't.
segment so she knows, and that way you let her know too.
Okay, Karen Rodriguez, or is she may have a married name?
Yeah, she's Karen Rodriguez too.
Okay, Karen Rodriguez, we're grateful for you as well, for getting bringing us your sister and all that you've done. So, Bianca, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you being here.
No, thank you for having me. Let me know for the next time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and keep up the great work. And thank all of you for
Thank
listening
you.
to this episode of From the Median Podcast. We will see you next time.